The morning arrived slowly. Soft sunlight spilled across the kitchen floor, warming the wooden boards in quiet patches of gold. The house was still. No alarms. No rush. Just the low hum of a refrigerator and the distant sound of birds waking beyond the trees. The man sat at the table with a mug held loosely in both hands. Steam curled upward, fading into the light. He took a slow breath, letting the calm settle into his chest. Mornings like this felt rare now, simple, unbroken, gentle. At his feet, the dog rested quietly. A German shepherd, calm and alert even in stillness. His body was relaxed, yet his ears shifted now and then, catching sounds too soft for human notice. His eyes were open, thoughtful, following patterns no one else could see. The man reached down absently, brushing his fingers through the thick fur behind the dog's ears. The dog didn't lean into the touch. Instead, he lifted his head. Slowly. Deliberately. His ears rose. His posture changed, not tense, not afraid, but focused. As if a quiet switch had been flipped somewhere deep inside him. The man noticed. He always did. "Hey," he murmured softly. "What is it?" The dog stood. He didn't bark. Didn't rush. He simply stepped toward the back door and stopped, looking back once. His eyes were steady. Expectant. Not asking. Inviting. The man smiled faintly, amused more than concerned. "You want to go out already?" The dog's tail moved once. Calm. Certain. Moments later, the door opened, and cool morning air slipped inside. The scent of damp earth and pine drifted in, fresh and grounding. The dog stepped out first, pausing just long enough to orient himself, then moved forward with purpose. The man followed. Beyond the yard, the woods waited. Tall trees stood close together, their leaves catching the early light. Sunbeams filtered through the canopy, breaking into soft fragments that danced along the ground. The forest felt familiar, yet somehow different this morning. Quieter. As if it were holding something gently in place. The dog walked ahead, not pulling, not wandering. Leading. His pace was steady. Measured. Every few steps, his nose lifted slightly, testing the air. His ears tilted, adjusting to sounds that never reached human awareness. The man slowed without realizing it. He watched the way the dog moved, how each step seemed intentional. Not searching wildly. Not reacting. Following something already known. "You smell something, don't you?" the man said quietly. The dog didn't look back. He didn't need to. They moved deeper into the trees. Leaves crunched softly underfoot. Somewhere nearby, a bird took flight, wings brushing the air. Sunlight warmed the dog's back, catching shades of brown and black in his fur. Then the dog stopped. Not abruptly. Purposefully. He stood still, body aligned, eyes fixed on a point ahead. His breathing remained calm. Controlled. The man followed his gaze but saw nothing unusual at first. Just trees. Shadows. Roots winding through the soil. Yet something shifted in his chest. A subtle awareness. The dog took 2 careful steps forward, then paused again. His head lowered slightly. His nose hovered near the ground, inhaling slow, deliberate breaths. The man felt his curiosity deepen. Not sharp. Not anxious. Gentle. He crouched a little, hands resting on his knees, trying to see what the dog saw. The forest looked different from this angle. More detailed. More alive. A broken branch lay near a tree root. Not freshly broken. But not ancient either. The dog glanced back once, then returned his focus to the spot. That glance carried meaning. Look closer. The man leaned in, noticing faint impressions in the soil. Leaves disturbed just enough to suggest something had once been here, and had mattered. The dog sat down. Calm. Still. Waiting. That was when the man understood this wasn't excitement. It was intention. "You're showing me something," he whispered. The dog's tail thumped once against the ground. Soft. Certain. The forest seemed to quiet around them. Even the birdsong softened, as if the moment deserved space. The man's heartbeat slowed. Whatever this was, it wasn't meant to startle him. It was meant to be felt. The dog stood again and moved a few steps forward, stopping at the edge of a small clearing bathed in warm light. He didn't enter it. He waited. The man stepped beside him, breath catching just slightly, not in fear, but in anticipation. The clearing held something subtle, half-hidden, resting patiently in shadow. The dog lowered his head and released a quiet whine. Not distressed. Not urgent. Meaningful. The man stood still, frozen not by fear, but by the sudden sense that this moment had been waiting for him. And whatever the dog had sensed, whatever he had followed so carefully into these woods, was about to change the way the man saw everything that came before. The dog didn't rush forward. He stood at the edge of the clearing, still and composed, as if giving the moment space to breathe. Morning light filtered through the branches above, settling softly on the forest floor. Dust drifted lazily in the air, glowing where the sunlight touched it. The man stayed beside him. Neither spoke. The silence wasn't empty. It felt intentional, like a pause between thoughts. The dog's ears tilted slightly, catching something distant. His nose lifted, then lowered again, tracing an invisible path in the air. Every movement was controlled. Thoughtful. Not searching wildly, but confirming something he already understood. The man watched closely. He had seen this before, in smaller moments. On quiet walks. On evenings when the dog would suddenly sit and stare toward nothing at all. But this felt deeper. More focused. More purposeful. The dog took a step forward. Then another. Slow. Careful. The man followed without question. Leaves crunched softly beneath their feet. A bird fluttered from a nearby branch, then disappeared into the canopy. The forest responded gently to their presence, as if recognizing the calm rhythm they carried with them. The dog paused again. His body angled slightly to the left, nose hovering just above the ground. He inhaled once, then again. Longer this time. His tail remained still, balanced. The man noticed how his posture had changed. Not stiff. Not tense. Aligned. Like every sense had narrowed toward a single thread. "You've got something," the man whispered. The dog did not look back. He moved forward, guiding them around a cluster of trees where the light softened into a warm glow. The ground here felt different and springier, layered with old leaves and moss. The air carried a faint, clean scent, familiar, yet hard to place. The dog slowed. His steps became lighter. Deliberate. The man adjusted his pace, mirroring him unconsciously. His breathing slowed. His thoughts quieted. He stopped trying to understand with logic and began simply observing. The dog stopped beside a fallen log. Its bark was weathered, softened by time and rain. Moss clung to its surface in deep green patches. The dog leaned forward slightly, nose brushing the air near the base of the log, then pulled back. He waited. The man leaned closer. At first, he saw nothing unusual. Just earth. Leaves. Shadow. But then his eyes adjusted. He noticed a subtle disturbance near the roots, soil pressed down just enough to suggest weight. Not recent. Not old enough to be forgotten. The dog sat. Calm. Patient. He did not move. Did not push. He simply stayed, giving the man time to see what he had already sensed. The man's chest tightened slightly. Not with fear. With recognition. "You noticed this long before I did," he said quietly. The dog's ears flicked once, acknowledging the sound. His eyes never left the spot. The forest remained still around them. Sunlight slipped through the leaves in soft patterns, warming the dog's back. Somewhere in the distance, water trickled faintly, steady and soothing. The man shifted closer, studying the ground. He noticed faint impressions, small, deliberate marks shaped by time rather than urgency. Whatever had been here once hadn't arrived in chaos. It had arrived gently. The dog stood again. He took 2 steps forward, then stopped. He looked back at the man, not urgently, not impatiently, but with quiet certainty. "This way." The man followed. They moved deeper into the clearing, where the light grew warmer and the shadows softened. The dog's intuition guided each step. He didn't rush toward the end of the trail. He measured it. Respected it. As if he understood that discovery was not meant to be sudden. It was meant to unfold. The dog paused near a small rise in the ground, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. He sniffed once. Then twice. His posture remained steady, his breathing slow. The man felt a gentle pull in his chest. Something was connecting. Not just dog to scent, but dog to memory. Dog to meaning. The dog lowered his head slightly and released a quiet whine. Soft. Controlled. Full of intent. The man stopped instantly. That sound wasn't asking for help. It wasn't warning. It was guiding. He placed his hand lightly on the dog's shoulder. The dog leaned into the touch for a brief moment, grounding himself, then returned his focus forward. The connection between them felt stronger now. Not louder. Not dramatic. Clearer. The man realized he wasn't being led somewhere random. He was being led somewhere important. Something the dog had noticed not with his eyes, but with his intuition. With the quiet understanding that some things leave impressions deeper than footprints. The dog took one final step forward, then stopped. He waited. Not because he was unsure, but because the next part was for the man to discover on his own. The man stood still beside the dog. Not because he was told to, but because something inside him said to wait. The forest felt quieter now, as if the morning had softened its voice. Sunlight filtered through the branches in thinner streams, stretching long shadows across the ground. The air carried a deeper scent of earth here, cooler, richer, layered with time. The dog remained motionless. His posture was calm, balanced. Not alert in a defensive way, focused. As if he were holding a thought in place, allowing the man time to catch up. The man followed the dog's line of sight. At first, he saw nothing remarkable. Just a gentle rise in the ground. Leaves settled unevenly. A patch of moss darker than the rest. Then he looked again. Closer. He noticed how the leaves didn't lie naturally. How the soil beneath them was slightly compressed. Not disturbed recently, but not untouched either. A quiet curiosity stirred in his chest. He crouched slowly, careful not to rush the moment. From this angle, the forest revealed details he usually overlooked. Fine lines in the dirt. Subtle patterns shaped by time and intention rather than chance. The dog shifted his weight slightly. Not impatient. Encouraging. "You want me to see it," the man murmured. The dog's tail moved once. Soft. Certain. The man leaned in further, brushing a few leaves aside with careful fingers. Beneath them, the ground held faint impressions, marks that told a story without words. Something had been here. Something small. Something deliberate. He sat back on his heels, exhaling slowly. This wasn't random. And that realization changed the way he looked at everything around him. The trees. The light. The quiet. He began noticing how the forest seemed to cradle this place, how branches leaned inward just enough to offer shade. How the ground dipped gently, protected from wind and noise. It felt intentional. The dog stepped forward a few inches, then stopped again. He didn't cross into the space. He respected it. As if he understood its importance before the man ever could. Curiosity deepened, not sharp, not anxious. Warm. Thoughtful. The man felt it settle into his chest, spreading slowly. This wasn't about solving a mystery quickly. It was about understanding something that had been waiting. He shifted his position, scanning the area more carefully now. He noticed a faint path through the grass, barely visible unless you were looking for it. Not a trail made by feet, but by repetition. By routine. The dog's ears flicked. He had already noticed. The man followed the path with his eyes. It curved gently toward the trees, then disappeared beneath fallen leaves. His mind began to connect small details, nothing dramatic, nothing loud. Just quiet clues. He glanced at the dog. "You've been watching this place, haven't you?" The dog didn't respond with movement. He didn't need to. His stillness was answer enough. The man rested his forearms on his knees, allowing himself to simply be present. The forest seemed to breathe around them. Somewhere far off, a bird called. Somewhere closer, leaves shifted softly. Time felt slower here. Kinder. The man realized something then. He wasn't being led because the dog was worried. He was being led because the dog cared. That thought settled gently, filling the space where curiosity had begun. The bond between them felt quieter now, deeper. Built not on commands or routines, but trust. The dog finally moved. Just one step. Then another. The man followed, heart steady, curiosity guiding him forward. The path narrowed slightly, light dimming as branches grew closer overhead. Shadows softened the edges of everything. The dog stopped beside a low cluster of bushes. He lowered his head slightly and looked back. Not urging. Inviting. The man stepped closer and noticed something tucked beneath the leaves. Not hidden carefully, just resting. As if placed there without expectation. He didn't reach for it yet. He simply looked. And in that moment, curiosity shifted again. It became something more reflective. More personal. He felt a quiet awareness rising. Whatever this was, it wasn't meant to shock him. It was meant to remind him. The dog sat beside him, close enough for their shoulders to nearly touch. The warmth of his presence grounded the man, anchoring him to the moment. They stayed like that for several breaths. Man and dog. Observer and guide. The forest holding them gently in place. The man hadn't discovered the truth yet. But he understood something important now. The dog wasn't leading him toward a surprise. He was leading him toward a memory. A meaning. A moment that deserved patience. And with that realization, curiosity softened into quiet respect. They didn't move right away. The man remained where he was, knees bent, weight resting lightly on his heels. The dog sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. Neither felt the need to fill the silence. Sunlight shifted overhead, filtering through the leaves in slow patterns. The warmth settled gently across their backs, as if the forest itself had chosen this moment to linger. The man exhaled. Long. Quiet. He realized he wasn't just observing anymore. He was listening. Not to sounds, but to the space between them. To the way the dog's presence steadied his thoughts. To the unspoken understanding forming without effort or explanation. The dog turned his head slightly, just enough to glance at the man. His eyes were calm. Grounded. There was no urgency there. Only trust. The man rested one hand against the dog's shoulder. The fur was warm beneath his palm, solid and familiar. The dog leaned into the touch gently, acknowledging it without breaking his focus. That small gesture tightened something in the man's chest. Not painfully. Gratefully. They had walked these woods many times before. Passed through clearings like this. Stopped beneath these same trees. Yet this moment felt different, not because of where they were, but because of how they were together. The man noticed how naturally his breathing had matched the dog's rhythm. Slow. Even. Calm. The constant hum of everyday worries felt distant now, muted by the quiet certainty of the present moment. The dog stood first. Not abruptly. Smoothly. He took a few steps forward, then paused, waiting not to be followed blindly, but to be joined willingly. The man rose and followed. They moved carefully now, as if respecting something unseen. The ground dipped slightly, cushioned by layers of leaves. Shadows softened the edges of the path, and the air felt cooler here, wrapped in shade. The dog slowed his pace. He checked in often, not with movement, but with awareness. A slight turn of the head. A pause long enough for the man to remain aligned. This wasn't about speed. It was about connection. The man felt it deepen with every step. He noticed how the dog avoided stepping directly into the small disturbed area ahead, circling it instead. Not because he was cautious, but because he was considerate. As if he understood that this place deserved care. The man mirrored that instinct without thinking. He stepped lightly. Listened carefully. Trusted fully. At the edge of another small clearing, the dog stopped again. Sunlight poured into this space more fully, warming the ground and highlighting tiny details, floating pollen, faint marks in the dirt, the gentle curve of the land. The dog lowered his head and inhaled slowly. Then he sat. The man did the same. No words passed between them, yet the silence felt full, layered with understanding. The man realized he wasn't waiting for something to happen anymore. He was allowing something to be. His thoughts drifted, not to fear, not to questions, but to appreciation. For the patience in the dog's movements. For the way trust had grown quietly over time, unnoticed until now. He rested his forearm against his knee and let the stillness settle. The dog shifted slightly closer. That small movement, unprompted, instinctive, felt like reassurance. "You're here. You're doing this right." The man swallowed gently, emotion rising without warning. He hadn't expected to feel this way, not from a walk, not from silence. But this wasn't just a walk. It was a shared moment of awareness. The dog finally stood and took a few steps forward, stopping near the edge of the clearing. He looked back once more. This time, his gaze held something deeper. Not instruction. Not urgency. Trust. The man followed, heart steady, footsteps soft. He felt anchored, present in a way that rarely happened. Whatever lay ahead no longer mattered as much as the fact that they were approaching it together. The forest seemed to respond to that connection. The air felt warmer. The light gentler. Even the sounds around them softened, as if honoring the bond moving through the space. The dog paused one final time, just before the trees grew closer again. He didn't whine. Didn't move. He simply stood, grounded, patient, unwavering. The man stopped beside him. In that moment, the connection between them felt complete. Not loud. Not dramatic. But deep enough to carry meaning. Whatever truth waited ahead, it would be faced together. The dog stepped forward first. Not far. Just enough. The man followed, careful to keep his movements slow, respectful. The forest narrowed again, trees drawing closer as sunlight thinned into softer bands. The air felt still here, cooler, quieter, like a place meant to be approached gently. The dog's pace changed. Slower now. Measured. Each step felt deliberate, as if he were counting them. His nose dipped closer to the ground, tracing something invisible. His ears remained relaxed, but alert, tuned to details the man could not hear. They reached a small dip in the earth. Not deep. Not dramatic. Just a shallow hollow, naturally formed, protected on three sides by roots and low brush. Sunlight filtered in only briefly, touching the ground before slipping away again. The dog stopped at the edge. He didn't enter. He waited. The man felt it immediately, an instinctive pull to pause. He stood beside the dog, scanning the space slowly. At first glance, it looked ordinary. Leaves. Soil. Shadow. But then his eyes adjusted. He noticed how the leaves were layered differently here. Carefully. Intentionally. Not scattered by wind or time. The ground beneath them appeared smoother, pressed down evenly. Something had been placed here. Not hidden. Resting. The man lowered himself into a crouch, movements slow and mindful. He reached out and brushed a few leaves aside, revealing the earth beneath, packed gently, as if shaped by repeated care rather than force. His breath caught, not sharply, but softly. The dog shifted closer, close enough that the man could feel his warmth. The dog didn't interfere. Didn't push. He simply stayed present, offering quiet support. The man brushed aside a few more leaves. Beneath them lay something small. Simple. Weathered. It wasn't immediately clear what it was or why it mattered, but the moment carried weight. The kind that presses gently against the chest, asking for attention rather than reaction. The man paused. He didn't touch it yet. He looked at the dog. The dog met his gaze calmly, eye steady, grounding. There was no excitement there. No urgency. Just assurance. This is what I wanted you to see. The forest felt impossibly quiet now. Even the distant sounds seemed muted, as if the world had leaned back to give them space. The man finally reached forward. His fingers brushed against the object, cool, textured, worn smooth in places by time. It felt familiar in a way he couldn't immediately explain. Memory stirred. Not fully formed. But close. The dog sat beside him, posture relaxed but attentive. He watched without judgment, without expectation. The man lifted the object slightly, examining it in the soft light. It wasn't something valuable in a traditional sense. No shine. No precision. But it carried intention. History. Care. The man swallowed slowly, emotion rising in a way that surprised him. He hadn't come into the woods looking for meaning, yet here it was, unfolding quietly in his hands. He lowered the object back into place, as if respecting its presence. Something told him it belonged here, for now. The dog exhaled softly. A calm sound. Satisfied. The man leaned back on his heels, processing. The forest no longer felt like a mystery. It felt like a witness, patient, steady, holding stories without urgency. He looked around the hollow again and noticed more now. Subtle signs of care. Small adjustments made over time. Nothing rushed. Nothing careless. Whoever had been here before had returned often. And had done so gently. The dog stood and took a small step forward, placing one paw just inside the edge of the hollow, then withdrew it again. A gesture of acknowledgement. Of respect. The man understood then. This wasn't about discovering something lost. It was about recognizing something remembered. He felt a warmth spread through his chest, not excitement, not sadness, but understanding beginning to take shape. The dog glanced up at him once more. This time, his expression felt softer. Relieved. As if the first part of his task had been completed. The man rose slowly, careful not to disturb the space. He took one last look at the hollow, committing its details to memory. Whatever this place held. Whatever meaning rested here. It wasn't meant to be taken. It was meant to be understood. The dog stepped back onto the path and waited. The man joined him. Together, they stood in the filtered light, the gentle reveal settling quietly between them, unfinished, but clear enough to feel. The truth was closer now. Not waiting to surprise them. Waiting to be felt. They didn't leave the clearing right away. The man stood beside the dog, both of them facing the narrow path ahead. Light filtered through the branches in soft layers, shifting slowly as the sun climbed higher. The forest felt warmer now, not brighter, just kinder. As if it understood what had been revealed, and was allowing space for it to settle. The man rested his hands at his sides. His thoughts moved slowly. Not scattered. Not urgent. He felt something turning inside him, subtle, but unmistakable. The object in the hollow had not explained itself fully, yet it had stirred something deeper than curiosity. Memory. Not sharp images. Feelings. Textures. Moments without clear edges. The dog remained close, his presence steady. He didn't look at the hollow anymore. He looked at the man. Watching. Waiting. The man took a quiet breath and finally spoke, barely louder than the wind brushing the leaves. You knew this mattered. The dog's ears flicked once. Acknowledgement. That simple response shifted something important. The man realized the dog hadn't discovered this place today. He had remembered it. Returned to it. Carried it quietly until the moment felt right. That realization pressed gently against the man's chest. He turned back toward the hollow, seeing it differently now. Not as a discovery, but as a continuation. Something that had never truly been lost. He crouched again, slower this time, more deliberate. His gaze moved across the ground, noticing patterns he had missed before. A stone placed just slightly out of place. A branch resting where it wouldn't naturally fall. Signs of care. Of return. The man felt a warmth rise behind his eyes, not enough to spill over, but enough to change the way he breathed. The dog stepped closer, brushing lightly against his side. Not seeking attention. Offering grounding. The man placed a hand against the dog's neck, fingers curling gently into his fur. The contact steadied him. Anchored him in the present. I think I understand, he said quietly. The words surprised him as they left his mouth. He didn't fully understand, not yet, but he understood enough. This place wasn't tied to loss. It was tied to intention. Someone had come here repeatedly. Not to hide something away, but to keep it safe. To return. To remember. The man stood again, slowly, letting the thought settle. His chest felt fuller now, not heavy, but expanded. The gentle tension that had guided him through the woods had shifted. It wasn't pulling him forward anymore. It was holding him still. The dog moved a few steps ahead, then stopped. He didn't urge the man onward. He simply stood in the path, waiting, giving him time to feel the weight of the realization. The man looked at the dog and smiled faintly. Not from amusement. From gratitude. You brought me here when I was ready, he said. The dog's tail moved once. Quiet. Certain. The forest seemed to respond to that understanding. Sounds returned gradually, birds calling again, leaves stirring softly, the distant trickle of water resuming its rhythm. The moment wasn't ending. It was transforming. The man realized that whatever truth waited ahead would not undo what came before. It would add to it. Complete a shape that had been forming quietly, patiently. He took a step forward. So did the dog. Together, they moved past the hollow, leaving it undisturbed. The path ahead curved gently, framed by trees that felt less imposing now. Light filtered through in warmer tones, brushing the ground like reassurance. The man felt calm. Centered. He wasn't searching anymore. He was remembering. The dog paused one last time and looked back, not at the hollow, but at the man. His expression carried something close to relief. As if a long-held responsibility had begun to ease. The man met his gaze and nodded. Whatever this place meant. Whatever story it held. They would understand it together. And as they continued deeper into the woods, the emotional turning point settled fully into place, not as a dramatic revelation, but as a quiet certainty. The kind that doesn't demand attention. The kind that changes everything anyway. The path opened gradually. Not into a wide clearing, but into a quieter space where the trees stood farther apart, their branches lifting slightly, as if making room. Sunlight reached the ground more freely here, settling in soft pools that warmed the earth. The dog slowed. His steps were lighter now. Almost relieved. The man noticed the change immediately. The tension that had guided them earlier, gentle but persistent, had softened. Whatever had pulled the dog forward no longer pressed so urgently. They had arrived somewhere important. The dog stopped beside a familiar shape. A simple wooden marker, weathered by years of rain and sun, leaned gently at the base of a tree. Moss clung to its edges. Leaves had gathered around it, not carelessly, but protectively. The man's breath caught. Not sharply. Quietly. He hadn't noticed it before, not from a distance, not while walking past in other seasons. Time had softened its presence, blending it into the forest like it belonged there. Because it did. The man stepped closer, heart steady but full. The marker didn't demand attention. It didn't announce itself. It waited. He knelt beside it, brushing away leaves slowly. The wood beneath was worn smooth, touched often, cared for patiently. There were no grand words carved into it. No declarations. Just a simple sign of remembrance. The truth settled gently into place. This wasn't a place someone had left behind. It was a place someone had returned to. The dog sat beside the man, close, calm. His posture held a quiet pride, not for what he had found, but for what he had preserved. The man rested his hand against the earth. Memories surfaced, not in sharp images, but in warmth. In the feeling of hands resting on fur. In the sound of breathing beside him during quiet evenings. In the comfort of presence rather than words. This place marked a bond. One that hadn't ended. One that had simply changed shape. The dog leaned into the man gently, pressing his shoulder against him. The man welcomed the weight, grounding himself in the moment. "You remembered," he whispered. The dog's tail moved once. Soft. Certain. He had returned here often. Not out of sadness, but loyalty. To keep the place from being forgotten. To make sure it stayed cared for. Respected. The man understood now why the object in the hollow had felt familiar. Why the signs of care had felt intentional. This forest had been holding a quiet promise. And the dog had been honoring it all along. The man sat back, allowing the truth to settle fully. The emotional pull he felt wasn't grief. It was gratitude. For the bond that had existed. For the way it had been remembered without needing explanation. The dog shifted slightly, then lay down beside the marker, not on it, not against it, but close enough to acknowledge it. A guardian. Not of loss, but of love. The forest seemed to exhale around them. Sunlight warmed the space, catching the dog's fur in gentle highlights. Birds resumed their calls, unbothered, at ease. This place wasn't frozen in time. It was alive. The man realized then that the dog hadn't dragged him into the woods to show him something painful. He had guided him here to remind him of something beautiful. That bonds don't disappear. They remain quietly waiting to be noticed again. The man reached out and rested his hand on the dog's back. The dog remained still, content. They stayed there together, allowing the truth to settle, not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. The dog lifted his head slightly and looked toward the path back home. Not urging. Just acknowledging. The man nodded. He rose slowly, taking one last look at the marker before turning away. He didn't feel like he was leaving something behind. He felt like he was carrying it forward. The dog stood and stepped beside him, posture relaxed now, task fulfilled. As they walked away, the forest closed gently behind them, not hiding the place, but holding it. Safely. Quietly. With care. The walk back felt different. Not shorter, but lighter. The forest no longer held unanswered questions. Sunlight filtered through the trees with an easy warmth now, touching the path in soft, familiar patterns. The air felt open, welcoming, as if the woods themselves had released a quiet breath. The dog walked beside the man instead of ahead. No longer guiding. Simply accompanying. His steps were relaxed, unhurried. The tension that once shaped his movements had eased, replaced by calm certainty. Whatever responsibility he had carried so patiently had finally found its place. The man noticed the change immediately. He felt it too. Something inside him had shifted, not suddenly, not dramatically, but with the quiet strength of understanding. His shoulders felt looser. His breathing deeper. The forest sounds seemed clearer, more musical. They passed familiar trees, roots curling along the ground like old friends. The path felt recognizable now, no longer mysterious. Each step carried a sense of continuity rather than discovery. The dog paused once and looked back, not toward the marker, not toward the hollow, but toward the man. His expression held contentment. The man smiled softly. "Thank you," he said. The words were simple. "Enough." The dog's tail moved once in response. They continued on, moving together in an easy rhythm. Leaves crunched gently beneath their feet. A breeze stirred the canopy above, sending shifting patterns of light across the ground. The forest didn't feel like a place of secrets anymore. It felt like a place of memory. Of care. Of quiet preservation. When the trees thinned and the yard came into view, the man paused for just a moment. He looked back once, not searching, not longing, but acknowledging. The woods stood still, holding what they had always held. He turned away without hesitation. The dog stepped forward, ready to follow him home. Inside, the house welcomed them with familiar stillness. The light through the windows had shifted, softer now, warmer. The man set his mug down, untouched since morning, and sat quietly for a moment. The dog lay nearby, content, resting his head on his paws. They didn't need to speak. The understanding remained. The man realized that the day hadn't given him something new. It had returned something he already had. Perspective. Connection. Gratitude. The dog had not dragged him into the woods out of urgency or fear. He had guided him there out of loyalty. Out of love. Out of remembrance. And now that the truth had been acknowledged, the dog no longer needed to carry it alone. The bond between them felt stronger, not because it had changed, but because it had been honored. The man reached down and rested his hand on the dog's head. The dog's eyes closed slowly, peacefully. Outside, the forest continued its quiet rhythm, unchanged, steady, patient. And somewhere within it, a small marker stood, not forgotten, but understood. The man leaned back, letting the calm settle fully into place. He knew that life would move on. Days would fill again with routine, noise, and distraction. But this moment would remain. Not as a mystery. Not as a surprise. But as a reminder. That sometimes, the most meaningful discoveries are not meant to shock us. They are meant to heal us. And sometimes, a dog doesn't lead us into the woods to show us something hidden. He leads us there to help us remember what has always mattered.